Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the Trade, Travel, and Tourism Committee. I'm Chairman Joe Buscaino and I'm joined by Council Member Mike Bonin. Today is Tuesday, September 3rd. Welcome all. So Mr. Bonin, if I think we have cards. Let's turn to cards here. Cards on all items. Okay, Herman, come on up. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak on all items that you pulled with 1 minute of general public comment. And let me remind you to stick to the items. If you don't stick to the items, you'll be asked to, you will forfeit your time.
Let me do this really slow. On item number 3, the motion of Joe Buscaino under POLA, the chief legislative analyst reports the impact tariffs, and I support Donald Trump, our president, on the tariffs. We need more tariffs to keep these fucking terrorists out of our port for smuggling in drugs and more drugs and more drugs in Los Angeles because the fucking Italians have something going down in the economy. That's the reason why the community impact statement from the faggot mayor was not submitted. Then we got 2 other items on item 4. Fuck that item. Item 5 from Mr. Bonin. Fuck Mr. Bonin with no tie. But what's interesting on item number 6 is that there was a time limit in which the First Amendment under 42 U.S.C. 1983 was not recognized in the Westchester Gulf Partners, and the LLC under Conabi and Englander was not extended to the term, fooled you bitch, it's 18 months. So the golf course at the LAX, as you heard, was not adopted. The community impact statement, none submitted. That's the reason why this stupid fucking silver-tongued cop is speaking while I'm trying to speak, and it's distracting. So again, I want to thank Homeland Security, Mr. Kenny, I believe it's Hong at 213-330-9803 for the record. Thank you, Pasadena bitches.
So now my general public comment. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, Armando Herman has been subjected to different targeting of mental strategies by the city of Los Angeles and the city of Pasadena. For the record, Armando Herman was called by the so-called Department of Homeland Security on Friday. And then, as of today, Mr. Herman responded during a conversation in which to correlate the issue regarding Bagdasarian versus the United States and Clarence Brandenburg versus Ohio. 2 issues regarding First Amendment and free speech against the United States. Why can't I say nigga in a public meeting? Why can't I call the nigger policeman, Joe Buscaino, N-I-G-G-A-R? I'll tell you why, because the nigger's trying to be a punk and not wear a tie, and that's why the bitch is all upset during my general public comment.
Okay, with that, Wayne, come on up. Okay, so you pull all the cards, so 2 minutes on all the cards and 1 minute general public comment.
But
Stick to the items, so you'll forfeit your time.
Greenberg's trying to sign up, and you turned it off, nigger. Nah, you get the number 1, Gabriel Ashajian. The shady man is back. Yeah, it's getting shady on the airport commission. The airport commission oversees the worst fucking airport in the United States. LAX is a fucking international shithole and a disgrace. And the reason why is because of people like this Gabriel here don't do shit. It costs too much to fucking park. There's no goddamn transportation in or out. It's an outmoded, filthy, dirty, disgusting fucking relic of a piece of shit. LAX is a piece of shit. Everybody knows it. Everybody. Even Mike Bonin and Buscaino. That's why they won't even wear a tie. They're so disgusted with this subject matter. And then you get to the niggas on number 6, golf niggas, yes. And of course, the lease is to extend further the golf course niggas. Now, I've been over to Westchester Golf Course. The little tiny shack there looks like shit. The parking lot looks like shit. And the greens are bumpy as a motherfucker. Yes, sir. And then whenever niggas try to go over there, they trying to go, are you here to buy a drink? No, I'm here to putt. I'm calling the cops because you're loitering. Now, if I was a white motherfucker in a
The items.
Bentley, they'd be getting there. That's right, because Westchester stands for racism and that. They don't want blacks that are surrounding the area. They only want these pasty white bitches like Joe Blop's Cabrillo. Yeah. Now we get to this stuff. Now, as you see, look what you got running this fucking city right here. These two losers. First of all, it's a business meeting. They don't even wear a fucking tie. Number 2, both of them busy. They faking. You see, they faking, they reading. Actually, we know Mike Bonin can't read. That's why when he ordered a child from Amazon, he got a black Django instead of a normal baby. That motherfucker can't even click the right mouse to order kids online. He's such an illiterate fuck. And then, of course, whenever something comes out of my ass, I don't put something back in. An asshole is designed to eject shit, not stick shit in. And finally, the other asshole here, see, that's what they're doing. Look, I'm busy, I'm not listening. You listen to every word, you two disgusting faggot niggas, you're no good. Go fuck yourselves in the ass and let the other man sign up. You're both niggas. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Greenspan, please come forward. Herman, stop clapping. No need to clap, okay? That's your final warning. You're disrupting the meeting, Herman. Thank you. Mr. Greenspan, so you have all the items. You have 2 minutes to speak on all the items, and then 1 minute of general public
That's what I
comment.
was going to ask the order.
Thank you.
Mike Greenspan, Bruin Butt Kicking Florida Gator, and I want to congratulate the reappointment of Mr. Gabriel L. Eshagian, excuse my South Georgia accent if I've mispronounced it, to the airport commissioners. After all, there is one item that we go into, and it's about the police, the airport police, because John Walsh, rest in peace, was a big critic of the airport police. In fact, about 3 years ago, they merged the police pension funds with the LAPD and the airport police. And, of course, that I've always agreed with Mr. Walsh that it drained on the LAPD funds. Now they've got money for their capital improvements. I don't figure out how. Anyway, the agreement with the custodial services. I've often thought that the airport should have an airport school so we could be training people in professionalism, not running it like Chicago and cronyism, but true, honest-to-God professionalism. And one of the cornerstones of it would be the teenagers doing the menial jobs, like the custodial work. So they can't tell them one day when we've produced management activity from this airport school, if it ever comes to pass, that, oh, you never worked a job like this one. And they say, yes, I did. And now, we're great at price gouging at our airport. That's what is my pet peeve. I bought recently a bottle of Honest Tea and paid $4.04 for a 16-ounce bottle. Yes, it was $3.69, 5 cents for the CRV, and the illegal tax on the item. It cost about $1.50 at Walmart and Target. It's a food item. We're not supposed to tax it at a store.
Okay, 1 minute.
Now, general public comment is more a continuation of the idea of the airport school. We could have airport careers. It was once given a great idea, stroke, by Bob Hertzberg. Of course, he was running for state senate, and anyone who knows him knows he's a slimy Jewish lawyer who will say anything to get a vote, but it would be a great idea. We have a chance to really excel over Chicago. They're into, oh, we just elected a black lesbian mayor, so they could have Black Lesbian Mayor Fest. We can have Airport Fest out here and in Atlanta, showcasing the airport and going on the way to building faster flights. That's right, faster flights that go to other points. Instead of going 57 million miles to Mars, we should be focused more on getting around the Earth's orbit faster. It's called the SST. They use it in military. Why we're not using it in commercial, I don't know. That's just one of the talking points I came here to talk about. Thank you for letting me speak, and Bruin
Thank you.
stuck.
Thank you. Is there Mr. Schmidt, Jr.? Schmidt? Okay. We'll close comment. So, Mr. Bonham, if I can direct your attention to the agenda, I'd like to recommend taking on consent items 5 through 11. Like to hold any of those?
Nope.
Okay, so with that, without objection, items 5.
Council members, items
Yes.
8 and 10 have reports from the CAO that were submitted after the publication of the agenda. Do you want to approve those reports as part of your action this afternoon?
Without objection, that'll be the order. Okay, so we'll approve those items on consent. Send those to council. Okay, with that, let's now take item number 1. Item number 1 is now before us.
John White, Office of the City Clerk. Item 1, communications from the Mayor and the City Ethics Commission relative to the reappointment of Mr. Gabriel L. Ishagian to the Board of Airport Commissioners for the new term ending June 30, 2024.
Wait, Commissioner, welcome. Good afternoon.
Good morning, and thank you very much. I'm honored to be here for what is now my third reappointment to the Board of Airport Commissioners. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you, Councilmember Buscaino, Councilmember Bonin. I'd also like to give a warm welcome to members of our humble staff who are here.
Sure.
David Maggard, who our former Chief of Police, who is now our Deputy Executive Director of Security and Homeland Security.
Does he add another star to that, or? No?
I'd also like to welcome Mike Christensen, who's our Deputy Executive Director of our Facilities and Maintenance and Utilities Group, and also Mark Adams, our Director of External Affairs. Thank you for being here. I know not specifically for me, but we're happy to have you here representing LAWA.
Well, you want to do this again?
Yeah, it's great.
So tell us why. One more round.
Council members, as you know, I'm very passionate about our city. I'm very passionate about our airport. It was a huge honor for me to be appointed here 6 years ago, just at this time. I've worked with many of you. I am intimately involved working with our CEO, Deborah Flint, our Chief Operating Officer, Justin Arbaci, and all of you in ensuring that we're building a world-class airport on a first-class neighbor. We're very excited for the future. We have most of the big development projects of our capital program are underway. We have next week the groundbreaking of our consolidated rental car facility, and that should set the stage for what the next 5 years of construction will look like at the airport, which will be challenging times for all of us. But the light is certainly at the end of the tunnel in terms of what we're trying to achieve there. So I thank you very much for putting your faith in me through this time, and the rest of my colleagues on the Board of Airport Commissioners.
Let me say I appreciate your service to our city. I know your years on this commission, you have led with just heart, compassion, and you've been relentless on a number of key projects. One that you just mentioned, the CONRAC, as we're seeing a $14 billion overhaul of our airport. You and your colleague commissioners ought to be commended for the work you continue to do. But at the same time, as Mr. Bonin often reminds us, it's important to be a good neighbor to our surrounding neighborhoods. So I'm supportive of Mayor Garcetti's reappointment of Commissioner Ishagian, and here to support you and have you continue to lead our airport and see through it these critical projects that really going to allow us to up our passenger experience and also be a good business partner to our airlines, get more tails in to our airport.
Absolutely. I thank you very much. I'm honored to have your recommendation, and anything else I can answer for you, I'm here, and for you as well.
Thank you. Mr. Bonin?
I'll try to be quick, because if you hurry and get to the elevator, you can find those guys, and you can direct them to how to go to BOAC meetings and make comment there. Thank you for your willingness to serve. You've been a great asset on the commission for a number of years now. We've had a pretty pretty good steady core on that commission.
Absolutely.
And with you and Sean and Val. And I'm glad you mentioned all the different projects. Just wanted to hit two things about the different projects. One of them hasn't started yet. One very important to me and the neighbors, which is North Side. We're moving forward on that, but just want to underscore the importance of that project. And I'd love to see, I know Val will be engaged, I'd like to see the other board members engaged too. My primary focus being that the stuff that was meant to be a benefit to the community gets done up front, so that we're not here 40 years from now saying the airport got what it wanted, but the community didn't get what it wanted. The other thing I just wanted to sort of underscore about all the construction projects, you talked about what the next 5 years are going to be like. I mean, the next 5 years are going to, they're going to suck in a lot of ways for the airport, but I want to make sure that doesn't extend out to whatever extent we can stop it into the neighborhoods around the airport. I mean, the construction is going to be hard. Keeping the airport going while we're doing all of this is going to be a challenge. And in the end, everybody wins. I just want to make sure that the neighbors around there don't suffer too much.
No, absolutely. And we certainly appreciate, the board and staff certainly appreciates your support in terms of helping us with our surrounding neighborhood communities. And obviously, Commissioner Velasco, who's the neighborhood representative, she does an outstanding job in engaging all the stakeholders around to minimize certainly the traffic impacts that have such a domino effect in the districts surrounding and the cities surrounding LAX. What I can say is that I don't think the impacts of what we're doing really at this stage will be visible once you get actually inside the terminals. I think the terminal projects that in terms of our refurbishments are really on their way, and the impacts to our travelers once you get through the doors are minimal. So the next 5 years from a passenger experience inside the airport is still meant to be phenomenal and continue to be elevated continuously. The traffic element clearly is difficult, and it is a challenge. And if I could tell you that even last night, probably every single day of my life, I get at least a dozen texts about how who's running this place, they ask me, in terms of getting in and out of the airport. And I just say, look, it's on its way. We're getting there. We've got a great plan in place to make it happen, and you have my commitment that I am involved on that front. On the north side, I'd like to comment on that as well. I'm also intimately involved with my experience as a real estate developer on the north side plan. Certainly, community benefits are very, very important in terms of the developer that we choose. One of the things that I've also discussed at prior board meetings is the fact that development should not be done piecemeal, because the airport has had a tendency in the past to do things on a piecemeal basis without sort of an overarching theme. And I think that the overarching theme of that development will be the biggest community benefit, if you could ask me, a place where people can congregate or actually be part of that development, and how it reflects the greater vision of LAX and the surrounding community. So you have my solemn promise that I will be involved as much as I can in my role.
I couldn't agree more on the fact that it can't be done piecemeal.
Correct.
Because if it's done piecemeal, the stuff the community is supposed to get will never happen.
Correct.
Because that only is going to nobody's going to do it because they want to do it. They're going to do it because they have to do it to be able to do the other stuff.
That's right.
Just, last thing I wanted to mention is item 4. We're going to be discussing the power outage on June 5, and LAWA staff has done a phenomenal job, I think, on the report we're going to be discussing. It's very detailed. There's probably close to 30 different recommendations in various subject areas. Not all of them are things that LAWA needs to implement, but I'd like to make sure that there's a follow-up at the board level, and that these recommendations get considered and they don't just stop here with us. So I'd like to ask for that.
You also have my complete commitment on these issues. One of the things that parlays into the overall energy requirements at the airport is something that I've been very passionate about, which is the sustainability initiatives that we have at the airport, that we're fully on board. We have a terrific leader in that department, Samantha Bricker and Tammy McCrossan-Orr, who are dedicated to achieving not just minimum levels of responsibility, but also being, as you know, in the past we've talked about it, world leaders in terms of airport sustainability initiatives. We've even talked about ideas as big and bold as developing microgrids at the airport that can be powered by the food waste that is generated by concessions and lounges. Of course, these are very big ideas that need to be boiled down and worked through, but we are committed to it, not just at the highest levels, but also at the board level of the airport.
Well, for the environment, you can't go big enough at this point.
No, that's right.
And our port does a really great and always improving job on environment and clean air. I just want to make sure the airport always does better.
We're trying.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. So with that, hearing your sense of support,
Yeah.
we'll approve this recommendation for the mayor on your reappointment.
Thank you.
So
Wonderful.
congratulations.
Really
Without
appreciate it.
objection, we'll send that to council, I believe, next Wednesday.
Yes, June
Next-
11th.
Hopefully.
June 11th.
September 11th.
That's the
September
deadline,
11th.
so we have to get it on that day.
Okay, it's got to happen that day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gabe. Thank you, sir. Okay, so with that, let's take items, if you're okay, Mr. Soroka, 2 and 3. We'll take 2 and 3 together. Let's do that.
2, POLA to report relative to status of department activities, including operations, finances, capital improvement projects, public safety and security, planning technology, and marketing promotions pursuant to motion Buscaino-Bonin. Item 3, Bonin, Buscaino, Rodriguez instructing the Port of Los Angeles with assistance of the CLA to report on the impacts of tariffs at the Port of Los Angeles and on the local region and economy.
Mr. Soroka has joined us. Thank you so much. Our port director to give an overview and executive director report on the status of the department. A lot has happened since the last time we met as it relates to good movement, community projects that are taking shape. First and foremost, I want to thank your leadership and commitment to our port and our communities and overall city. And looking forward to hearing your report.
Thank you, Chairman Buscaino and Committee Member
If you can
Bond.
get on the mic, Gene.
Is it on?
Yeah, how's that better?
How's that?
Yeah.
Sound a little better?
I know Gabe was very low.
Is that one a little better, John? Okay. Thanks. How's that? A little better?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
I just put together some brief slides under the overall context as we have been sharing with this committee for some time now on business community and our environmental stewardship. And to start on the business side, we just recorded our all-time record year with closing of our fiscal 19 campaign at nearly 9.7 million TEUs. That's the third consecutive year that we have set the record for the fiscal status, and we are aspiring now to set the record on a calendar year basis, which most of the industry recognizes for the fourth year in a row here in 2019. I must say, though, that this comes with much more work to do. While the numbers are impressive in a standalone fashion, we have lost market share for 17 years in a row since the unfortunate lockout of longshore labor in the year of 2002, when we had 97 ships outside at anchor not moving, and it took us the better part of a half a year to clean that backlog up. At the same time, today, we are only one of 2 complexes in the United States, marine port complexes, that are moving less cargo than they were last year at this time, for a variety of reasons, but only 2, and that would be the San Pedro Bay Complex and Port Everglades, which has been known for a long time as one of the penultimate cruise destinations and origins. Why? Folks have been out campaigning us for the past 17 years. And I think we have stemmed the tide. We're now, for the first time in that amount of time, we are outpacing the market at the world level, in the Asia theater, as well as the cargo that is moving in and out of China, which we monitor so very closely. But this has continued to be a call to action during my tenure to stem that tide of lost market share, which simply means less containers and less jobs. So we will continue to forge ahead in this area. Part of that is our digital strategy, and has been talked about in front of this body before. Our relationship and contractual endeavors with the General Electric Transportation Group are starting to yield some results. We now have 90% of all import cargo in the Port of Los Angeles under the auspice of the Port Optimizer. And this, as a reminder, is a software program that allows us a deeper line of sight to what cargo is coming toward us, so we can share it with other supply chain stakeholders earlier. And they can prepare both their talent as well as their capital assets to move the cargo swifter through the port. So I'm very encouraged by the progress we've made in Los Angeles. That needs to be extrapolated over to Long Beach, as the folks in our industry typically look at us as one harbor. Although we at the city level compare ourselves a lot, I would say to you today that our relationship on a practical level of working together has never been better with the leadership of Mario Cordero at the Port of Long Beach. Again, more work to do in this area, but very pleased at our progress so far. If we're going to play in this digital space, it is our belief that we need to be good stewards of this data. In fact, I would use the term great stewardship in this area. You may remember that in September of 2014, the Port of Los Angeles was the first in the nation to set up its Cybersecurity Operations Center, which is now stopping 20 million cyber intrusion attempts per month at the port. We felt, after what we saw in the industry, that we needed to reach out a little bit further and get public and private sector cooperation happening at the same time. So we've designed a concept called the Cyber Resilience Center. Think of it as a neighborhood watch program amongst people who compete fiercely every day. If they see an intrusion attempt in the private sector, or they see something that isn't quite right in that cyber field, they will share it with the port, who will synthesize the information and blast it out to everyone involved in our supply chain activities around the port. We see this happening in other sectors of business too, not just necessarily the container shipment business, but an easier way to share information when someone is down. The purpose going in will be under the condition of anonymity. We don't want folks preying on others who may be vulnerable in a cyber attack and selling against them in a commercial market. At our kickoff meeting in April, we had all of our stakeholders that we had aspired to get together, including the two Western railroads, at the table, giving us ideas on how we could make this a best practice, inclusive of the representative of the Tech Committee, Dane Jones from the ILWU, who also offered a tremendous amount of insight as to what we could do in working in collaboration to slow down the effect of what cyber intrusions mean and how we can better protect this port. Again, there's a long runway on this, but I'm very pleased by not only the outreach that staff has done, but the receptivity of the industry thus far. On our community side, the San Pedro Public Market, which has been a cornerstone Chairman, of all of your work on the waterfront to revitalize our activities and entertainment, will be soon coming to life. The 171,000 square foot, 40-acre Phase 1 facility will be set for groundbreaking in the early part of 2020, with an opening staged for the fall of 2021. This will include a 30-foot wide promenade, as well as a 5,000-seat amphitheater at the most southerly end of Phase 1. All folks are excited. We're working around the clock with the developer, potential tenants, and many others who have been so gracious with their time to be involved and make this a first-class project. On the horizon beyond this, Out to Sea, who will break ground in November of this year, with many milestones remaining to be hit for an aggressive expansion of the facility. This urban marine research facility will be also first in class of its kind right here at our home at the wharf in San Pedro. The work here is also quite daunting, but with so many good people around, I see success right on the horizon. Again, November of this year for groundbreaking. And then that won't stop our efforts. We'll continue to pursue repurposing of land throughout the harbor. These are the three main areas we've been focused on with your support. The Cabrillo Way Marina, which is an 87-acre facility. We put out an RFP in June of this year to see what type of interest we could garner. This will also include 700 marine water slips right at the foot of this property. So we see that as constructive for retail adaptive use and many other ideas that will probably come in from the investor public. Warehouse number 1 to the upper right of your screen is also a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Originally developed for the trade that was moved through the Panama Canal nearly a century ago, this could be a mixed-use facility that has never been seen before. A lot of work needs to go into it, a lot of private sector investment and guidance, but we see the opportunity to work at state and local levels on our side of the government with the private sector to really make this something very special. And then lastly, looking at berth 46, at the most southerly end of our facilities that you'll see on the map here on the wall, is a chance for us to really take it to the next level with respect to cruise. The cruise industry is growing here in Southern California, as we are the largest drive location in the nation, meaning we got such a vast population, so many folks can drive right here to our harbor and get on these ships to great destinations. With that, the ships are getting bigger, so we need to find an area to place these ships that also have other activities for these passengers, whether it's hotels, retail, dining, etc. So the look at this RFP, which will probably be coming out in the fall of this year, will be to those cruise and other interested parties that see an imagined waterfront when it comes to this particular sector of our business. Nice. And the reason that this is so intriguing to us is that with every cruise vessel call to San Pedro, it means about $1 million in local GDP within a 2 square mile area of the port. And so that's all of our restaurants, our shops, and the small businesses that are family-owned that really benefit from these passengers coming to visit our harbor enclave. Fleet Week just concluded over the weekend. A lot of activities so many of us were involved in. The work of so many folks, the Bob Hope USO, the Battleship Iowa, the Fleet Week Foundation, our first responders, Los Angeles Police Department, Fire Department, state and county officials, and so many others, including Harbor Department staff, Council Office of CD15, as well as the Mayor's Office, played such a great role to bringing back our 4th consecutive year of Fleet Week. And as we look to the future, there'll be more and equally as impressive opportunities for us to partner with so many folks that bring a lot of people down to our waterfront. So very exciting again, and a well-needed day off for some of our staff that had worked around the clock for seemingly months on end to put this program together. On the environmental side, some big activities happening right now. This picture will be a demonstration project of the hydrogen fuel cell concept that was developed by Toyota. With a ZANZEF grant from the state of California, which is a zero and near zero emissions dedicated pot of money, we're partnering with UPS, Kenworth, Toyota, Shell, and the Port of Hueneme to demonstrate this new package of propulsion that Toyota has created. It's about an $82 million project, half of which is funded by the state of California, the other half by the private sector companies, to see if we can learn enough from this most ambitious pilot project yet to be undertaken by the port. Can these trucks go long enough? Are they really zero emissions? Can we tell what the emissions reductions will look like? Can we get the cargo moving the proper way? All of those questions remain to be answered in this highly fashioned demonstration project, but really very impressed by the folks from the private sector who have joined and the way the state has stepped up in trying to fund an alternative technology to clean fuel that could be really groundbreaking for us here. Toyota has some 1,500 engineers in Los Angeles and in Toyota City, Japan, dedicated to this project overall. And the technology you may be familiar with, it's built off of the passenger car, the Toyota Mirai, of which has been tested here in Southern California for some time and is utilizing some 30 hydrogen fuel stations today. A couple other things that we're working on the environmental front, a detailed MOU with the South Coast Air Quality Management District that would be a triangulated view between the AQMD, the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach to underpin the Clean Air Action Plan and its specific milestones as requested by AQMD staff. I believe we'll hit all necessary time spans and mile markers for that project. We're also looking to complete by fall of this year with board approval in both Long Beach and Los Angeles what we call the truck rate, or an incentive program to get folks moving from older diesel bearing trucks to those of newer, cleaner, and renewable emission standards. That has to take a lot of work from the state level in creating regulations, but I think we have found the opportunity for a revenue stream and injection directly to the original equipment manufacturers as well as their tiered suppliers to advance and accelerate the technology being commercialized in Southern California. And that concludes my update on the three major areas.
Thank you, Mr. Soroka. Just a couple questions. On the business side of things, so assuming that the increase, incredible numbers in the TEU counts, 9.6 million TEUs, do you believe they've been driven by anxieties of a potential trade war? I know we're going to get into the next item. Because of that, do you anticipate a slowdown in TEU count coming through our ports?
Yeah, we're going to hit a cliff at some point.
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of causals thus far. You've seen a fairly good uptick in imports around those trade tariff milestones that we have witnessed over the past 17 months. That's been somewhat of a driver. We've also experienced 9 consecutive months of export declines. Combined, for every container we earn from other Asia locations as folks change their outsourcing patterns, we lose 2.5 containers from China. Warehouses today in the Inland Empire, which are the largest infrastructure project in the world at about 1.8 billion square feet, have less than 2% vacancy. That's nearly double the U.S. average today. So there will be a point where we have so much product in the country because folks have front-loaded these inventories that we'll see a slowing in the overall import value and volume of containers. Don't know when that is. We've been trying to predict this now for some time since Washington and Beijing got into this debate, but the American consumer is resilient, and we are still buying products at the store. Yet what's being hurt most, and we'll talk about this in the next segment, on the export side of the industries that are so valuable here in California. But the watch out is still there, and I'm very concerned.
And as far as strategies, what are the strategies in port employing to encourage more calls for the larger ships that come through our port complex? What are the strategies to bring these larger ships that come in?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I think the industry came to us with a larger ship scenario before a lot of folks were ready, yet we were. Decades ago, this city and port complex were prepared in the engineering design with a deeper channelway, wider turning base, and strong wharfs to handle these big ships. I didn't know folks really thought that the ships would grow triple in size from what they saw. But today we are prepared on an infrastructure standpoint. We are prepared also from this digitization platform that we've created where we can see and handle larger quantities of cargo at greater pace. And to give you an example, in the month of July, when we put out our numbers, the exchange rate, how many containers are lifted on and off a ship, is nearing 10,000. That is by far the greatest of any port in the Western Hemisphere today. For every one call, nearly 10,000 containers go on and off a ship. The other incentive programs that we have today are around how we can grow our cargo at a pace equal to or faster than the nation's growth. As I mentioned, we've been slower than the nation's growth average for the past 17 years. So we've offered a nominal dollar value to bring more cargo in and at the same time share data. And that data sharing idea is so we can move the cargo more smoothly and with more predictability, which is what our customers are asking for. So I think we need to keep pushing along and keeping the accelerator down on all these initiatives because the name of the game in our industry now, Chairman, is competitiveness. And we've got to show on a number of fronts that we can exceed the expectations of our customers.
Yeah, the port optimizer is definitely forward-thinking. I commend you and your team for leading on that front. At the same time, it comes with risks of potential, cyber attack. So how has the centralizing element of the port optimizer exposed the port to an increased cyber attack?
I think it proved out in its first trial. Okay. When we ran the pilot...
No longer a pilot. It's on.
That's correct. Version 1 was officially made available to the public and private sector both on January 22nd of this year. And while we're, as the industry calls it, white-gloving our onboarding, meaning really taking care of everyone who wants to join this program, we've still got a long way to go. But to answer your question specifically, when we ran the pilot at AP Moeller Terminals with the support of shipping line Maersk and Mediterranean Shipping out of Geneva, it was the same time that the NotPetya attack in Eastern Europe impacted many of the companies associated with the international supply chain, including APMT worldwide. And while these two platforms were running side by side, the attack and our pilot, there was no penetration to the GE port optimizer. Great, that's wonderful, and we've hired some folks to really look at what the bad guys are doing and try to stay a step ahead of them. But this is where I see taking the Cybersecurity Operations Center now to the Cyber Resilience Center, the next step in protecting and being great stewards of our data.
I appreciate that.
But we can never rest in this area. You rightfully call it out.
Sure. And on the community side, I haven't seen this amount of commitment to our community from the Port of Los Angeles in decades. Clearly, on the infrastructure work that's being provided by the port in partnership with the private developer and the Jericho and Rakovich team. I know we had a little setback with the promenade in Town Square. Can you give me an update on that?
Yeah, we'll be moving ahead. We're probably 2 months behind schedule. And there is a lot of work that has to be finalized between the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach on their land swap deal. And that's basically decades and even in some cases a century-old deal on railroad properties that were owned between the two ports. Part of what Long Beach wants is the work that they can do on their Pier B rail yard, of which we own some land as the city of L.A., and part of ours is on the waterfront, which we want to use, obviously, in the San Pedro public market. And that administrative work, 2 years' worth of negotiation back and forth between the two ports where we came together with a reasonable deal, has just dragged us about 2 months behind pace. But I think we'll do okay.
And also want to commend you and your team for the committing specific dollars to community projects as well. And how are we doing with that list that you're all still considering?
Well, this is an interesting one. We started
Community
back
investment.
in 2015. Mike Galvin and I were talking. Mike is in charge of our waterfront real estate. And we came up with this notion that maybe if we could dedicate a specific dollar value of funds, it would help get projects accelerated. So we came up with this idea of a public access investment plan, which dedicated 10% of our operating income to projects to be matched with in-kind money for the ongoing maintenance and operations. Once you build something, you got to take good care of it, right? And that's the Harbor Department's responsibility. The idea of 10% was, A, something we could afford, but B, if the port was more successful in growing its business revenues, that means that the community would get a larger chunk of that money. And that's exactly what's happening. We've surpassed $500 million in revenue for the first time in our history. We've added nearly $700 million in new revenue since I came on board. All of that carved out goes to the community. And it still is a best practice in the U.S. from what we're told with our colleagues in Sacramento and Washington. But we are now on our third iteration of planning projects, and we haven't finished the first one. Mm-hmm. So it's the eagerness of both staff and the community to say, we've now got confidence in you because you've shown on the infrastructure side you can build things. You've shown the good ideas about bringing the private sector in. So let's think ahead of pace because sooner or later we're going to get to the point where you're building things and we got to be right there with the new ideas. So I really am encouraged by the enthusiasm on this level.
Anyway, on the Wilmington side, we're all fired up to finally move on the Wilmington waterfront. Yep.
Sure.
In the words of Dave Arian, rise up, Wilmington.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. On your slide 9 on the private development opportunities, we know oftentimes, we have to abide by the State Lands Commission. Has the port explored ways in working with the State Lands Commission for expanding the possible commercial uses for private development at the port? We all know that Controller Galperin put out a report saying that if you look at finding ways to really maximize private development on these key parcels, where are we at with looking at other ways and working with the state lands?
Yeah, we talk to the state lands folks once a week, if not more. And in fact, they just held one of their field hearings a couple of Fridays ago down at the LAX area at the Sheraton Hotel. So they're open for creative ideas, and it's with this project planning that they'll be able to get a line of sight on what's possible and what needs to be looked at for a second time.
And on the private development side, a significant blow to us with Elon Musk pulling out of the Southwest Terminal. I recently toured that site with Amazon and Mr. Galvin as a potential fulfillment center. What's your vision there on using the Southwest Terminal that would be a job generator in a way that finding ways to diversify the workforce there with the docks, all to sea, and this Southwest Marine Terminal that's continues to sit vacant.
Yeah,
we had no control of that. But
I'm all for it. And part of what we've done, Chairman, as you've known, is we've tried to reactivate and repurpose land all the way through, much of which came at your advice. The look at Southwest Marine will also have a stakeholder component, too. There's still a lot of folks that believe that place has a great slot of history in all the hearts of Angelino, so we'll have to work carefully there. It's also a great backdrop for Hollywood as a lot of filming continues to take place. But we've got anywhere between 8 and 12 acres of land that needs to be put into use. And so creative ideas like this that you're referring to in your recent tour, we are very open to.
Okay. Mr. Bonner, any questions on item 2?
Just a couple quick comments. One, it's exciting to see so much of the stuff that you and your staff have been working on for years starting to come alive. Thank you for that. Just a couple quick things. How often do we do this? Is this quarterly?
Quarterly, yeah.
Quarterly. On the slide on the Clean Air Action Plan, one of the things the city does a horrible job at is telling its success stories, particularly when it comes to environmental stuff. And there is a lot more meat to tell on the bones of that story down there. I'd love to see something so that it's always fresh in our minds. If just a slide that says, since we launched the Clean Air Action Plan, since we launched the Clean Trucks program, the air has improved this much. The emissions have gone down this much. Because I know now, the kids who grew up there aren't going to have asthma like my husband and his family did when they were growing up. And
happy to add that in for the next time. Just to refresh your memory, committee member, sulfur oxide is down 97% from the initial implementation of the cap in year 2006. Nitrogen oxide is down 60%, and diesel particulate matter down roughly 90%. Greenhouse gas is down in double digits, even though we didn't have the technology to get after it, which is now the cornerstone of this new revised cap. And this is all while cargo has grown by 25%. So we'll make it a more prominent slide in further refreshes, so you can also amplify our story. We think that's very important as well.
No, I think it's great stuff. And Gabe, I hope you were taking notes on what I'm expecting out of the airport. No, it really is a great story for the port in Los Angeles to tell.
And all of that, you may remember, was achieved some 6 years ahead of the timeline commitment to the community.
Right.
And that's why we called for a revamp or an update to the cap that now is in place since November of 2017.
Yep.
So we understand how important that narrative is.
Yeah. Another thing, if it's okay with the chair, I'd love to hear a report on next time you do it, is on job creation and job training. I think I inherited the need to ask that question from Dave.
Sure.
And it would be good to hear about that on a regular basis.
Right. And there's a lot we can talk about, and I know some of the more recent dialogue has been fairly polarizing and in a very public setting. What I can tell you is a couple of things, and this comes as a longtime industry observer, not one who is partisan on one side or the other, which I can't be in running this port. Over the last 18 months, with the growth in cargo that we have brought to this port, and probably lagging by several years, we have hired 1,000 registered longshoremen and 6,000 casuals, or apprentices as would be called in other industries, over the last 18 months. And that by far outpaces the cargo growth during that period of time. But an argument can be made that hiring probably should have been started much earlier. Okay. This is also in the face of 2 automated terminals that are in the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles, much less the most recent one that has been debated and starting in early phase production. We began at Commissioner Arian's recommendation of trying to build our capabilities around workforce training and development going back about 4 years ago, once I kind of got my feet on the ground and could find the front door of the office. And part of that was hiring talented people, so we went out and recruited Aveen Sharma, who came from Secretary of Labor Tom Perez's office. He's been a great addition, interviewed by Commissioner Arian himself and supported. And then we got into the arena of what could we bring as far as a training center that would meet the requirements of all sides, politically, financially, operationally. And we set up the first ever lashing training center. And these are the big metal beams that go on the back of the ships and the sides to hold the containers on board when they're swaying on the ocean. And for the first time in as long as I've been in the industry, we got commitments from all 3 sides, the city/port, the ILW, and the PMA to say, hey, this is worthwhile. But we know that's only a start. Yet it's a comprehensive program that better prepares those folks who do a real high wire act every day, going 5 to 7 stories high on the ship to put these heavy beams on. We also have planned for a permanent training center that would be on the north side of the port, on the edge of Wilmington, north of the Dominguez Channel. And that idea was also born from Commissioner Arian's comments that, okay, longshore training is really important to all of us around the harbor, but we've got a dearth of welders. We're going to need to get kids out of the middle schools to see if they want a career at the port, whether it's working on the docks or an administrator like myself. And so this grander vision for a training center should incorporate classroom, on-the-job training. How could kids get into a field like I did? You know, where would they go to get that practical experience or education? We've partnered up with Cal State Dominguez Hills, the chairman's alma mater, as well as Harbor College, to set up training and certification for those who want to learn while they're on the job or get into a job, as well as helping set up syllabus work and curriculum for those who want to go to advanced education, whether it be 2-year, 4-year, or beyond. So there's a lot working around this. I would attest to you right now, we need a lot more smart minds around it, in addition to the people who are working around the clock. But we can bring you more comprehensive updates as we go forward on the quarterly reviews.
Just to piggyback on that, Mike, we, in light of the recent debate and concern about the future of work at the port, we'll be establishing and working with your team and the mayor's office a blue ribbon commission on the future of work at the port, among other industries, and how automation and technology is going to impact the workforce there at the port.
And this is really important too, and I think in one of the Harbor Commission meetings I made this comment, that if nothing else, if we could start with a dialogue around where we're at today and where we see ourselves going into the future. I don't recall a conversation that had any substance going back and forth between industry and labor along these lines, meaning that I think we're going to do this much more business in 5, 7, 10 years, and we're going to need this type of workforce.
Right.
Skills, number, people, hours of operation, whatever the case may be. And man, if we could do that, that would be a great start to getting people around the table to do what you all want to do.
We can't go into this with blinders on.
Yeah.
But appreciate the report on item 2. We can pivot now to item number 3. Laura's going to
What we're
set up the
changing-
slides. Yeah.
Yeah, what we're changing out, this next topic was to be around the trade war between Washington and Beijing, the policy itself, and what's been happening since all this started. So I put together just a couple of visuals, but I will tell you that this trade war started with the implementation of tariffs on sections 232 and 301 about 17 months ago, or in March of 2018. And what it's enveloped into today is that you could line up containers from the Port of Los Angeles to Manhattan and back twice, and that is the amount of cargo that's been impacted by these tariffs. Today, 55% of all the cargo that comes into the Port of Los Angeles is tariffed or taxed some way or another based on this policy out of Washington, and 98% of the goods coming out of China are tariffed. What we said at that time still holds true by and large, is that there would be consumer impact. Prices in certain sectors have gone up when we go to the store. And the most famous story I have heard personally is that there's a very prominent company that manufactures washers and dryers. And while in the original tariff implementation, washers were hit with the tax, dryers were not. But prices on both washers and dryers went up at the store. Okay. And there's similar stories along those lines as to how the consumer is impacted by this. There has also been a statement in the media and in other circles that the China-based manufacturers, companies, and government are paying for these tariffs. That is unequivocally false. The tariffs are paid by U.S. companies, import of record, to the United States Department of Treasury. And that leads us to the second point, that if costs cannot be passed on to the consumer, which we hope we're not. We want to be competitive in everything we do. We want to have buying power as American citizens. The companies may have to absorb the costs. And to a certain extent they are. There is documented proof on that. The other two pieces that have not been talked about are that if companies absorb these costs, you're going to have limits on hiring because they're looking out for their money in different ways and not paying attention to job expansion. And secondly, they're not paying attention to investment or capital expense, with two notable exceptions here in our area at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. I don't have a lot of meetings leaving where the guy who owns a truck company says, I'm going out and buying 10 more rigs. Or the warehouse operator says, I'm going out to put another shift on with 100 people. We're not seeing that in our supply chain because folks are very uncertain about what the future may hold. And to your question earlier, Chairman, if the volume just stops coming in because we've got so much cargo in the country, the retailers, the manufacturers, et cetera, those jobs go away. And that's why these folks are not moving forward with what you would normally see in an economy like this, especially in Southern California that's been so strong now since the recession. You'd see folks really investing in the future, and that's just not happening. And people are just genuinely pensive about what the future may hold with the next tweet. And then lastly, what we saw at that time and is happening today, even more glaringly than we predicted, are the shifting trade patterns. As folks try to de-emphasize their sourcing in China, they're moving to Southeast Asia, to the India subcon, et cetera. But by our numbers, it takes 7 Vietnams to make up for China. And in a strong from a volume perspective, right? In what we've seen thus far is that even folks who want to get out of the crosshairs of the federal government and their work against China at this point in time with tariffs, they're moving to countries that are already at full manufacturing capacity. So because we've had a good and robust economic growth series of years, folks are clamoring for that factory floor space in Vietnam and Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines. So the end game is that when they move to these countries for new sourcing opportunities, they're probably paying just a little bit more than they are out of China with the new tariffs. So here again, it'll impact my number one concern, and that is on the consumer.
Right.
Right. So those are complexities about the tariffs. Our response, obviously, has been that we continue to grow. And based on my statistics for the first 7 months of the year, we are outpacing organic growth in all three major areas, that of imports and exports to the world, imports and exports in the Asia theater, and those happening between us and China. So I attribute that to an extremely assertive series of efforts. But here's where it really hits the road for me. Imports from China are down nearly 10%, but we're making up for it in other locations based on a percentage from these other areas. Again, Vietnam, Indonesia, Southeast Asia countries, even moving over to the India subcon. But as I mentioned in my other deck, for every container we gain from the new locations, we're losing 2.5 from China. And our largest growth segment right now is the repositioning of empty containers back to Asia for the next round of imports, because we simply are lagging so bad with respect to exports. The three areas that have been hit the most on the export side are highlighted on the right side of your page and can be lumped into three categories. As I mentioned, the agricultural sector, which is so important not only to the state of California but the nation. The recyclable segment, those folks who send back all these raw materials that will then be made into finished and renewable products. And the third segment being heavy industry, including the auto sector. And we don't see a way out of this until we come to an active negotiated settlement. I lived and worked in China for 4.5 years. I understand what it takes to operate there. The company I represented had a wholly foreign-owned enterprise license. It did not require a local partner. It did not require forced technology transfer or intellectual property configurations that would go against the American theme. There are other remedies to this particular debate that we're in right now. Unfortunately, we've made very little headway along these areas. So we'll continue to gut it out. But realistically speaking, the growth is in Southeast Asia. I think we're well poised to continue to capture that growth. The folks on the ground representing the Port of LA have been very nimble in their service offerings and their ability to shift as the market has shifted. So as you can see from this particular slide, the strength of Southeast Asia is there and showing its face now. We're also seeing that North Asia, specifically South Korea and Japan, will be picking up so long as their bilateral trade agreements will permit, and those are still on the table.
I'm assuming, Gene, you spent a lot of time in those countries.
Yes.
At the top.
That's right. That's right. And I think that the on-the-ground work has been good. The realization that we can be a port that is quite flexible in how we manage cargo coming from far-reaching locations. So all of that bodes well for us, but you're talking about smaller countries that are ramping up versus a big behemoth that has been there for decades. And that really rises to the point that I cannot remember in my career where we have been in a 360-degree series of trade negotiations. Obviously, the negotiations with Mexico and Canada, which are so important to us, have not even gone through Congress, much less been approved yet. We have the European Union with basically nothing being said since last August with a meeting in the Rose Garden, and the ongoing debate, which is in the news so much, on China. It's a lot of fronts to be watching out for at one particular time.
Well, being the largest seaport in the country, are they including you? Is the Trump administration including you or staff in these discussions? Obviously, if any port's going to take a significant hit, it's going to be us.
We continue to knock on all the doors. I can tell you with the last administration, Chairman, I had 4 cabinet members' phone numbers on speed dial. Today, I find it very difficult to make it to even mid-level staff in Washington.
Yeah, it's asinine. It's just asinine.
Very difficult.
You know, you got
that will not stop us.
Yeah.
We will keep knocking on those doors and sharing our information.
Yeah, egos involved, these 2 international leaders, and yet if anyone's going to take a direct hit is our port.
Yeah, and for
our
us,
workforce.
as you always say, less containers mean less jobs, and that's what we're fighting around today.
Any other ports in the U.S. experiencing unusually high volumes of container traffic due to this tariff anxiety?
Yeah, just about everybody is seeing an influx of imports, probably more so here in Southern California and on the West Coast just because of our proximity. Right? Others have been able to shift and have not been as reliant on China as we have. Now, that's not by our design. That's the industry and how things have unfolded over the past 3 decades. But generally speaking, if I recall correctly, imports overall are up 2.2%, so modestly in the nation. Throughout the country, in the nation. And we're doing a little bit better than that today as the Port of Los Angeles.
Aside from what you mentioned, any other aspects of the port's business portfolio that has been impacted by these tensions?
Well, outside the ports business, what we've recognized, obviously, is that tourism from China is way down. And folks in the hotel sector, the
Right.
airport sector, as well as the people that would come on our cruise lines are noticeably different today as far as the volume of folks coming through those areas.
Right.
So that's a direct impact on how we look at our local community and the folks that are merchants there.
Right. Mr. Brown, any question? Thank you, Mr. Soroka. I believe what we'll do on item 3 is we'll call you back. This is going to be a regional, national issue. I'd like to have the rest of the council hear this item tomorrow in council.
Yes, sir.
You're okay with that, Mr. Soroka?
Absolutely. No,
Fantastic.
I welcome the opportunity. Thank you for putting this up there on the agenda.
Thanks for your presentation.
You're welcome. And just to close out on this,
Yep.
while we're trying to stay ahead of all the things that are outside of our control, I think that the salespeople like Eric Karras, who is here in the audience today, Mike DiBernardo, who you've known for many years, are super aggressive in pursuing these new opportunities to keep the cargo flow. We're also working on how to move the cargo in and out swifter. So that's a collaboration between labor, the employers, the industry, railroads, et cetera. And then this optimization and digitization project with GE and others that can make us even more competitive. So even though we've got economic headwinds and all of this dialogue around trade, we continue to forge ahead with what we believe is the right path.
Appreciate that. And thanks for mentioning the workforce as well. They are this incredible asset to our region and the port, and also our terminal operators and the shipping lines who continue to call Port of LA their port. So
We're all interdependent, and we
Yep.
couldn't live without one of the other stakeholders, and we know that very well, and we're very appreciative.
And like the airport, when the port succeeds, the community thrives. So
Yeah,
appreciate that.
Well, thank you for the
Okay.
opportunity, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Soroka. So with that, on item 2, we'll continue that, and we'll connect with Mr. Soroka next quarter,
Did you want to approve item 3?
and we'll approve item number 3.
Yes, sir.
Send that to council. Okay, with that, our fourth and final item, item number 4.
Item 4, motion Bond and Wesson instructing the Los Angeles World Airports and the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power to report relative to the June 5th, 2019 power outage at LAX and how security policy is allowed for checked bags to be returned to passengers after they had cleared Transportation Security Administration screening.
Thank you. We continue this item from June 18th. We have since have a report from the airport, and I'll defer to Mr. Bonin to kick this item off.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I want to thank staff for putting this together. I think it's actually a pretty thorough and thoughtful and comprehensive report. We had the sort of quick and dirty briefing a couple weeks after the incident, and this is really something I wanted to see. You have this broken down into several different subjects with specific observations and findings and recommendations for each one. If you want to go ahead and give us sort of the high-level overview, I know you have in the report for each category you have specific recommendations, and at the end in the summary you have sort of general recommendations. Maybe you want to stick to the general. That would be.
If I may, Mr. Bonin, if there's any point where there's some security issues and we have to go into closed session,
Yeah.
we're okay to do that, correct? Okay, very good. So I'll just defer to the chief on this. Thank you. Thank you.
Chairman Buscaino and Councilman Bonin, thank you for the opportunity to do this. Mike Christensen, Director of Operations and Maintenance. Perhaps I could kick it off by just recapping a little bit about the incident that brought this after-action report together. On June the 5th of this year, LAX suffered a power outage that lasted several hours, affecting 3 of the terminals, terminals 1, 7, and 8. The initial cause of the outage was the failure of one of the 34.5 kV lines that feeds all of the terminals in the central terminal area. And subsequently, most of the terminals came back online because of the fact that all the terminals at LAX have 2 power feeds. What occurred in those 3 terminals is the automatic transfer switches that serviced those terminals did not roll over to the backup power feed. So we also had a failure in that. I might mention Brian Wilbur.
Yeah, Brian's
with
right.
the DWP is here with us today too. So we've been working very closely with DWP to try to diagnose the problem with those automatic transfer switches, and they have a program that they're engaged in that is doing just that now. They've been extensively tested, and we have no problem at the moment. But as we go forward, DWP will be working on those ATSs, and they can give you more technical information if you desire. So the after-action report before you went into pretty great detail. We appreciate that you recognize this, Councilman Bonnet, about what we found. There were a number of issues related to communication, the way we relate to one another. Ultimately, one of the reasons that the power outage lasted as long as it did is those automatic transfer switches don't automatically light up an indicator somewhere that says that they never transferred. So it took several hours to really figure out, put our electricians on the scene and figure out that there was in fact a problem in those transfer switches. And this is a big part, I think, of what DWP is looking at, is changing those transfer switches to a whole different mode. In the meantime, a good share of the items in the after-action report are recommending differences in the way we communicate on these instances. And we've already had a couple very, very minor ones where we have implemented those changes in protocols and communication, and it's worked quite well. I will also have to say that in the midst of the June 5th and June 6th outages, DWP did position a high-ranking official in our Department Operations Center. And at that point, things really started happening quickly. So we now know that that will have to be a part of the protocols as we go forward, should it have anything to do with power. A couple things happening on the after action that are mentioned in the report. Well, actually, I'm going to go beyond what's even in here. I think a lot of these are ministerial and communication. A couple of the things that were mentioned were that we determined is in terms of response time, is what can we do to get a little better or faster response from DWP? So almost at the same time we experienced this outage, we had initiated discussions with DWP to actually put crews at LAX. There was an opportunity that has presented itself due to a project that the DWP is doing in their Santa Monica station. And we have now gone probably 4 different sessions into planning for actually moving DWP crews to the area just south of Westchester Parkway.
Wonderful.
Not far from, council member, if you remember, know where Trailer City is, in that particular area near the proposed RSX. So we have zeroed in on 2 small areas in that zone, even to the point of looking at some of the trailers that will be vacated as projects move on. DWP has put eyes on those and is looking at how we can schedule that out. So the indication is it is a green light, still in the planning stages on it, but it is green lighted. So that will be one of the things we can do, and it have 2 benefits. Number one, even though these crews will be covering the entire Westchester area, along with LAX, by the fact that they're this close could improve response time. And the other thing is having crews there will give us an automatic opportunity to make them much more familiar with the airport, get them properly badged. We have challenges sometimes with DWP crews that have to be escorted onto the air side. So that should take care of that issue quite nicely.
That's great to hear.
The other issue, of course, is with the automatic transfer switches, as I had mentioned, which is one of the roots of the problem. Been a lot of testing done on those. We've also implemented a new policy, and DWP has been great at this, where if for any reason they have to take one of the dual feeds offline, they're now notifying us. So we've implemented measures so that if that happens, we go on a heightened alert with our electricians, and we monitor very closely the situation so that we can respond quickly should that occur. The rest of these pretty much I'll leave to your reading in the report in terms of adjustments on protocols, communications, the way we stand up the EOC, the way we stand up the Department Operations Center, and do the response to these incidents. And be glad to answer any questions you might have on this or the quarterly reports that we sent over.
Thanks. Glad for this and the quarterly reports. I think I like the format, and I like the way things were broken down into the various subject matters. What I just want to make sure, and it's what I mentioned to Commissioner Shagian, is that the recommendations just don't get lost. So I want to talk to the board to make sure they take up the matter, and so that each of the recommendations can be considered. What isn't exactly clear is who the responsible agency is for each recommendation. Many of them are LAWA. Some may be DWP. I know there's one that is ZMD, and there may be a few others in there. So, LAWA may not have the ability to do all of them. I'm really glad to see DWPs being such a great partner on this. That's wonderful to see. But if either through the regular quarterly report you do, or through a subsequent report on this, give us a status report on which recommendations have moved forward and who the responsible agency is, so we can look back in 3 or 6 months and say, okay, all right, there's 27, 28 things in here. We've done 7 of them. 3 of them are other agencies. 5 of them are stalled. 2 of them we need money or something like that, so we can keep tracking them.
Very well. We'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah, because the thing is, I consider this incident as bad as it was to be a gift, because every time we have a small incident like this, we learn something. And whenever it happens, everybody's paying attention. And then today, we're not surrounded by reporters and stuff like that. Nobody's paying attention to the nitty-gritty of what do we learn from that and how do we improve on it. And, whether it's a cyber attack or something like what happened in Atlanta, we got to be prepared for the big event. And I think there's a lot that we learned out of that, particularly about the communications and stuff. And this is helpful with it.
Very well.
So hearing that, Mr. Bonney, do you want to hold this on the desk for the next 6 months or so and get?
Yeah. Let's
do that.
do a report back in. Why don't we say 4 months?
Okay,
Right?
sounds good.
What is it now? It's October, November, December. Yeah, in January. No. Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah, right after the first of the year. Yeah.
Should be good time.
And the commissioner is gesticulating wildly.
Like to make a quick comment, sorry.
Please,
For the record, council members, this is of the utmost priority.
just identify yourself, please.
This is Gabriel Shagan, Commissioner, Board of Airport Commissioners, soon to be reappointed, hopefully next week. First of all, I'd like to thank our staff for this terrific work. Also know that the board is very much involved in terms of making sure that our energy requirements are met, and that the future of our energy program specifically is of the highest priority. We have asked our team to come back to us at the board quarterly.
Great.
And just know that we'd like to satisfy your concerns that this is not something that is not at our level. We're all over it, I promise you. And of course, safety and security, why Mr. Maggart is here, is number one. And without this looked after, we can't fulfill those goals. So just
Thank you.
thought I would.
And there's also so many moving parts as this infrastructure is coming online, whereas there's always a threat of our utilities shutting down and just one line can get cut off.
With
Right.
one of the construction companies, something
Right,
accidentally
exactly.
happening. Yeah.
Appreciate that. So let's just continue this until the second meeting in January of 2020. Jean, if you don't have that. Thank you so much for that, and thanks
I
for
wanna
the
add
detail.
something
Yes,
real
DWP.
quickly, the
Please.
ATS replacement, we have identified the ATSs, and we've been working with the manufacturer on scheduling those replacements. The communication part of this, and really it was the response that was the bigger issue here. We've been working with the airport pretty extensively now on putting some protocols together that some of them are outlined here, specifically just meeting locations
Yeah.
and escorts onto the airport that have really streamlined the process. So we're really happy with where we're going with this,
Right.
and hopefully move
Well,
people
I'm glad to see the crew's going to be sort of
Nearby.
co-located at the airport.
Yeah, and I don't want to misrepresent what's going on here. We're rebuilding one of our facilities, and we're going to relocate essentially our hub of our patrol section over in that area. They're not dedicated to the airport. Essentially, that's their reporting.
But you're close
location.
by.
So they still cover the whole area,
Yeah.
but they're going to be a lot closer.
On the ATS, I think it's something I mentioned in June when we met. Will there be an ability to remotely monitor the ATS?
Yes, and
You have the technology in place now.
the units that we're purchasing
Right.
have that ability.
Okay.
What we still have to put in is the communication system that's going to go back to our energy control center. to be able to do
Understood.
that. So there's a wider scope to the project. Immediately, we want to replace the units, just so we have the newer models in place that have that ability.
Yep.
But we still have a communication system to build and put in. So that's the wider scope of the project.
Understood. Thank you, Brian.
All right.
Anything else? Okay, so we'll continue this. Thank you so much for the report and for the detailed after action. Okay, anything else on the desk? Okay, we are clear. Therefore, we are adjourned. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great day. Thanks, man.